The frost clings to every surface like a death shroud on this bitter January evening in 2004. County Road 16 stretches through rural Indiana like a dark ribbon, illuminated only by the occasional yellow street lamp that casts eerie shadows across empty farmland. The distant sound of dogs barking echoes through the silence, and somewhere in the darkness, headlights cut through the freezing air at 10. Brenda Moore's Honda Civic moves along this familiar route, the same shortcut she's taken home from work countless times before. The 24-year-old pharmacy technician has no idea that these will be the final moments of her life, as she knows it. Her radio plays softly, her purse sits in the passenger seat, and her phone, fully charged, rests in the cup holder. Everything appears perfectly normal on this frigid night, but normal is about to shatter. By morning, her car sits abandoned on the shoulder of that same road, the driver's door hanging open like a mouth frozen in a silent scream. Her purse remains untouched. Her phone shows missed calls from family members, growing increasingly frantic with each unanswered ring. But Brenda Moore herself has vanished without a trace, as if the Indiana winter night simply swallowed her whole. The discovery sends shockwaves through the tight-knit community. How does someone just disappear? How does a young woman driving home from work simply cease to exist between one heartbeat and the next? The questions multiply like cracks in the ice, each one more unsettling than the last. If stories of relentless investigations and long-buried secrets grip you like they do us, hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what's uncovered here, because what we're about to reveal will challenge everything you think you know about justice and time. The evidence at the scene tells a story of interruption. Keys still in the ignition, headlights left on until the battery died, no signs of struggle inside the vehicle. Whatever happened to Brenda Moore occurred fast, without warning, without the chance to call for help or leave behind clues for those who would search for her. 21 days into the new year, one life was gone, a family was shattered, and the mystery of Brenda Moore's disappearance was only just beginning. A life full of light. Brenda Moore's mornings always began the same way. A steaming cup of coffee shared with her golden retriever, Murphy, while watching the sunrise paint the Indiana sky in shades of pink and gold. At 24, she possessed the kind of infectious laughter that could lift the spirits of everyone around her. Her co-workers at Meadowbrook Pharmacy knew her as the one who remembered birthdays, brought homemade cookies to work, and never failed to ask about their kids. She lit up every room she walked into. Her mother, Carol, would later tell investigators, her voice breaking with the weight of loss. Brenda had this way of making everyone feel like they mattered, like they were the most important person in the world when she was talking to them. Her daily routine reflected a young woman building a life with purpose and joy. After those quiet morning moments with Murphy, she'd call her mother for their daily check-in, a ritual they'd maintained since Brenda moved into her own apartment 6 months earlier. Then came her shift at the pharmacy, where she'd spend hours helping elderly customers navigate their medications and chatting with regulars who came in as much for her warm smile as for their prescriptions. January 21, 2004, began like any other day. Brenda woke up humming her favorite Shania Twain song, shared breakfast with Murphy, and called her mother at exactly 8:15 a.m., their usual time. She sounded happy, Carol recalls. We talked about her plans for the weekend, about this new book she was reading. She was excited about life, about her future. There was absolutely nothing to suggest. Her voice trails off, unable to finish the sentence that would acknowledge the unthinkable. At the pharmacy, Brenda's colleagues remember her being in typical good spirits. She helped train a new employee, reorganized the vitamin display, and even stayed an extra hour to help with inventory. Her manager, Sarah Chen, watched her lock up the building at exactly 10:05 p.m., the same routine they'd followed dozens of times before. She waved goodbye like always, Sarah later tells police, said she'd see me tomorrow. She was wearing her favorite purple scarf, the one her grandmother knitted for her. She looked so normal, so alive. The drive from Meadowbrook Pharmacy to Brenda's apartment typically took 12 minutes along County Road 16. She'd made this journey so many times that she could probably navigate it with her eyes closed. Friends and family knew her route by heart. She always took the shortcut through the rural stretch because It was faster and, ironically, felt safer than the busier main roads. At 10:17 p.m., a farmer named Harold Jennings glimpses taillights moving along County Road 16 from his kitchen window. He's up late checking on a sick cow, and something makes him glance toward the road. Later, he'll tell investigators that he noticed the car because it seemed to slow down, then speed up again, as if the driver was uncertain about something. Somewhere between the pharmacy parking lot and her own front porch, Brenda Moore vanished, without a sound, without a trace. When normal becomes nightmare, the first signs of trouble emerge, not with sirens or flashing lights, but with the simple absence of a good night text. Brenda always texted her mother when she got home safely, a small ritual that brought Carol peace of mind. By 11 p.m., Carol's phone remains silent. She tries to call, but each ring goes unanswered, eventually rolling to voicemail.
Hi, you've reached Brenda.
Leave a message and I'll call you back as soon as I can. The cheerful voice on the recording feels like a cruel mockery as the hours tick by. By midnight, Carol is pacing her living room, calling Brenda's phone every 15 minutes. By 2 a.m., she's contacted Brenda's closest friends, her ex-boyfriend, even her landlord, anyone who might know where she could be. By dawn, panic has transformed into a cold, crushing certainty that something terrible has happened. At 6:30 a.m., Brenda's father, Jim Moore, climbs into his pickup truck and begins retracing his daughter's usual route home. He's driven County Road 16 countless times, but this morning, every shadow looks sinister. Every abandoned barn seems to hide secrets. The frost-covered landscape appears hostile and unwelcoming in the gray January light. Then he sees it, Brenda's white Honda Civic sitting on the shoulder of the road like a ghost from another world. The driver's door hangs open, and even from a distance, Jim can see that the car is empty, his heart hammered against his ribs as he pulls over and approaches the vehicle with trembling legs. Her purse sits undisturbed in the passenger seat, wallet intact with credit cards and $43 in cash. Her phone shows 17 missed calls from family members. Her keys dangle from the ignition, and her work ID badge lies on the floor mat. But Brenda herself has vanished as completely as if she never existed. Jim's hands shake as he dials 911, his voice barely audible as he reports his daughter's abandoned car. Within minutes, the quiet rural road transforms into a scene of organized chaos, police cruisers, an ambulance, officers cordoning off the area with yellow tape. But for the Moore family, the official response feels frustratingly slow. Detective Ray Sullivan explains standard procedure. Adults have the right to disappear voluntarily, and police typically wait 24 to 48 hours before launching a full investigation. The words feel like physical blows to Carol Moore, who knows with absolute certainty that her daughter would never simply vanish without explanation. You don't understand, she pleads with Detective Sullivan. Brenda would never do this. She would never leave Murphy alone, never miss work without calling, never go anywhere without telling someone. Something has happened to her. As word spreads through the community, volunteers begin gathering at the Moore family home. Friends from high school, customers from the pharmacy, neighbors who barely knew Brenda but understand the universal fear of a parent's worst nightmare. They all come to help. By afternoon, dozens of people spread across the fields surrounding County Road 16, calling Brenda's name and searching through frozen ditches and abandoned farm buildings. Hope collided with fear as the hours stretched into days, and then into something far darker. The hunt begins. The Indiana State Police Crime Scene Unit arrives at County Road 16 with the methodical precision of a surgical team. Detective Sullivan watches as technicians dust Brenda's Honda Civic for fingerprints, photograph every inch of the interior, and carefully bag each piece of potential evidence. The abandoned car becomes the center of an expanding web of investigation that will soon touch every corner of the small community. Forensic specialist Maria Santos explains the process to the gathered family members, her voice gentle but professional. "We're looking for anything that doesn't belong," she says, lifting a partial fingerprint from the driver's side door handle with delicate brush strokes. Hair fibers, skin cells, anything that might tell us who else was here that night. The evidence collection yields tantalizing but incomplete clues. Muddy shoe prints near the driver's side door suggest someone else was at the scene, but the prints are too degraded by frost and morning dew to provide clear identification. The partial fingerprint on the door handle offers hope, but forensic analysis reveals it's too smudged for a definitive match in the FBI database. Detective Sullivan begins the painstaking process of reconstructing Brenda's final evening. He interviews every employee at Meadowbrook Pharmacy, maps the exact timeline of her departure, and canvasses County Road 16 for potential witnesses. Each conversation adds another piece to an increasingly complex puzzle. Harold Jennings, the farmer who glimpsed taillights around 10:17 p.m., provides the most significant lead. Under careful questioning, he recalls seeing what appeared to be a second vehicle, a dark pickup truck, following the same route, approximately 3 minutes after Brenda's car passed his window. "I didn't think much of it at the time," Jennings admits, wringing his weathered hands. "But looking back, something felt off about the whole thing. The truck was moving slower than normal, like maybe the driver was watching something." This revelation sends investigators in a new direction. They compile a list of every pickup truck owner in the county, cross-referencing the information with known associates of Brenda Moore. The list includes over 200 names, but detectives begin the systematic process of interviewing each owner and examining their vehicles for any connection to the case. Meanwhile, FBI behavioral analyst Dr. Rebecca Torres develops a psychological profile of the likely perpetrator. The organized nature of the crime scene, no obvious signs of struggle inside the car, personal belongings left untouched, suggests someone familiar with the area who acted with premeditation rather than impulse. "This wasn't random," Dr. Torres explains to the investigative team. "The perpetrator knew Brenda's routine, knew she would be alone on that road at that time. This suggests either someone from her personal life or someone who had been watching her for an extended period." The investigation expands to include surveillance footage from every business along Brenda's road home. A grainy recording from Murphy's gas station, located 2 miles from where her car was found, shows a red pickup truck passing through the frame at 10:19 p.m., just minutes after Brenda would have driven the same stretch of road. The truck's license plate is too blurry to read, but investigators can make out enough details to narrow their search. They're looking for a mid-1990s Ford pickup, red or dark red in color, with what appears to be damage to the rear bumper. But with leads clouded and evidence inconclusive, the momentum drained away, and what began as a sprint for answers slowed to a crawl. The long silence. Time moves differently for families of the missing. Days stretch into weeks, weeks into months, and the acute panic of the first few days gradually transforms into a chronic ache that never fully disappears. For the Moore family, each passing day without answers feels like another small death, another piece of hope that crumbles and blows away like dust. By summer 2004, the flyers bearing Brenda's smiling photograph begin to fade and curl at the edges. The reward fund, initially swelled by community donations, grows stagnant as leads evaporate. Detective Sullivan continues to follow up on tips and potential sightings, but the case file grows thicker with dead ends than with promising developments. The official designation changes from active investigation to cold case in the fall of 2005, though Sullivan assures the Moore family that the file remains open and any new evidence will be thoroughly investigated. The words provide little comfort to parents who measure their lives not in seasons or years, but in the absence of their daughter. Carol Moore refuses to let Brenda's memory fade into the background of community consciousness. Every January 21st, she organizes a candlelight vigil at the spot where her daughter's car was found. The first few years draw dozens of supporters, friends, family members, neighbors who remember the bright young woman who served them at the pharmacy. But as time passes, the gatherings grow smaller, attendance dwindling as the community gradually moves on to more immediate concerns. The emotional toll on the family becomes increasingly visible. Jim Moore sets an empty place at the dinner table every evening for the first 3 years, a ritual that breaks Carol's heart anew each time she sees it. Their marriage, strong for 25 years, begins to strain under the weight of unresolved grief and unanswered questions. "People don't understand," Carol explains to a support group for families of missing persons. Everyone else gets to have closure eventually. They bury their loved ones. They hold funerals. They begin the process of healing. We're stuck in this horrible limbo, where we can't mourn and we can't hope. We can't move forward because we don't know if she's alive somewhere. And we can't let go because we don't know if she's gone. The Moore home becomes a shrine to their missing daughter. Carol maintains a scrapbook containing every newspaper article, every flyer, every police report related to Brenda's case. She prints out photographs from Brenda's social media accounts, frozen moments of laughter and joy that feel increasingly distant from the reality of their daily lives. Friends and extended family members struggle with how to offer support. Some avoid mentioning Brenda altogether, believing that silence might ease the family's pain. Others bring up memories at inappropriate moments, not understanding that every reference to their daughter is both a gift and a fresh wound. Detective Sullivan, now promoted and working on other cases, still calls the Moore family every few months, with updates that inevitably contain no new information. He's become deeply invested in the case, carrying Brenda's photograph in his case file, and thinking about her disappearance during quiet moments in his own investigations. The pharmacy where Brenda worked installs a small memorial plaque in her honor, but employee turnover means that fewer and fewer people remember the vibrant young woman who once brightened their workplace. Murphy, Brenda's golden retriever, lives with her parents now, growing gray around the muzzle and sleeping increasingly often in the corner where Brenda's belongings remain carefully preserved. For nearly 20 years, it seemed Brenda's story would stay among the files collecting dust, until science itself caught up with the secrets of. When science catches up to time, the call comes on a Tuesday morning in March 2023, nearly 19 years after Brenda Moore vanished from County Road 16. Detective Maria Valdez of the Indiana State Police Cold Case Unit dials the Moore family home with hands that shake slightly from excitement and trepidation. She's about to restart an investigation that has haunted a family for 2 decades. Mrs. Moore, Detective Valdez begins carefully. I'm calling about Brenda's case. We have some new developments that we'd like to discuss with you and your husband. The words hit Carol Moore like a physical force. After so many years of silence, of dead ends and disappointments, the possibility of new information feels both thrilling and terrifying. She grips the phone with white knuckles as Detective Valdez explains the breakthrough that has breathed new life into the investigation. Forensic genealogy, a revolutionary technique that combines DNA analysis with family tree research, has finally caught up to the evidence collected from Brenda's abandoned. Trace amounts of genetic material recovered from her clothing too small and degraded for analysis, using older technology, can now be processed using advanced DNA sequencing methods. The science has advanced dramatically, explains Dr. Jennifer Liu, the forensic geneticist leading the analysis. What we couldn't identify in 2004 is now perfectly viable for genetic genealogy research. We can take these tiny DNA samples and potentially identify not just the individual, but their entire family tree. The process sounds like science fiction to the Moore family, but Dr. Liu breaks it down in simple terms. The DNA sample is uploaded to public genealogy databases and compared against millions of genetic profiles submitted by people researching their family histories. When partial matches are found, genealogists construct family trees, working backward through generations, until they identify potential suspects. The work is painstaking and requires the expertise of both laboratory scientists and professional genealogists. Dr. Liu's team spends months analyzing the genetic data, building family trees, and cross-referencing their findings with the original case file. Every potential match must be thoroughly investigated and either confirmed or eliminated through additional DNA testing. In August 2023, the breakthrough finally comes. The genetic profile points to a family line that has lived in the same Indiana county for over a century. Further genealogical research narrows the possibilities to a handful of male relatives, all of whom would have been adults in. One name rises to the top of the list: Marcus Webb, age 49, a maintenance worker at the local school district who has lived in the area his entire life. Webb owns property just 8 miles from where Brenda's car was found, and DMV records show that in 2004, He drove a red 1996 Ford pickup truck, matching the description from the gas station surveillance footage. Detective Valdez and her team begin the delicate process of investigating Webb without alerting him to their interest. They map his daily routines, identify locations where he might discard items that could provide comparison DNA samples, and research his background for any previous connections to Brenda Moore or similar crimes. The surveillance is methodical and professional. Undercover officers follow Webb to work, document his habits, and carefully collect discarded coffee cups and cigarette butts from public trash cans. Each item is tested for DNA, and each test confirms what the genealogical research suggested. Marcus Webb was present at the scene of Brenda Moore's disappearance. But perhaps the most damning evidence comes from Webb's own actions in the months following Brenda's disappearance. Vehicle registration records show that he sold his red pickup truck in March 2004, just 2 months after Brenda vanished. The new owner scrapped the vehicle for parts within 6 months, eliminating any possibility of recovering physical evidence from the truck itself. Neighbors remember the truck sale as unusual because Webb had owned the vehicle for less than 3 years and frequently talked about how much he loved driving it. When questioned casually about why he sold it, Webb gave conflicting explanations, sometimes claiming he needed money for home repairs, other times saying the truck had mechanical problems. What began as whispers of possibility became the undeniable proof detectives had waited nearly 2 decades to hold in their hands. Justice finally arrives. The arrest happens at dawn on November 15, 2023, exactly 19 years, 9 months, and 25 days after Brenda Moore disappeared. Detective Valdez leads a team of 6 officers to Marcus Webb's modest ranch-style home on the outskirts of town, armed with a warrant and nearly 2 decades worth of determination. Webb answers the door in pajamas and a bathrobe, squinting against the early morning darkness as flashlight beams illuminate his face. For a moment, he appears genuinely confused by the presence of law enforcement officers on his front porch. Then Detective Valdez speaks the words that transform him from an ordinary maintenance worker into the answer to a family's longest nightmare. Marcus Webb, you're under arrest for the murder of Brenda Moore. The news spreads through the community like wildfire. Local television stations interrupt regular programming to announce that an arrest has been made in the decades-old cold case that haunted the area for so long. The Moore family, now in their 70s, face a media storm unlike anything they experienced during the original investigation. At the courthouse, Carol and Jim Moore sit in the front row as prosecutors present their evidence to the judge. The DNA match is overwhelming. The chances of the genetic material belonging to someone other than Marcus Webb are calculated at less than 1 in 50. The circumstantial evidence, when viewed through the lens of the DNA connection, forms a compelling narrative of premeditation and murder. Prosecutor Jennifer Hamilton outlines the state's case during the preliminary hearing. Webb, she argues, had been watching Brenda Moore for weeks before the attack. He knew her schedule, knew the route she took home from work, and positioned himself along County Road 16 to intercept her on the night of January. The defendant didn't choose Brenda Moore randomly, Hamilton tells the court. This was a calculated predatory act by someone who stalked his victim and waited for the perfect opportunity to strike. Webb's defense attorney argues that the DNA evidence, while compelling, doesn't prove murder, only that his client was present at some point when the car was abandoned. But the prosecution's case extends far beyond the genetic evidence. Cell phone records show Webb's phone pinging off towers along County Road 16 on the night of Brenda's disappearance. Cal workers testify that Webb called in sick to work the following day, claiming he had the flu, an illness no one else remembers him having. Most damaging of all, investigators discover that Webb had been at Meadowbrook Pharmacy multiple times in the weeks before Brenda's disappearance, filling prescriptions for his elderly mother. Pharmacy security footage shows him watching Brenda, following her with his eyes, as she moved around the store, and timing his visits to coincide with her work schedule. The trial begins in March 2024, exactly 20 years after Brenda Moore vanished. The courtroom is packed with family members, friends, community members, and media representatives drawn to the resolution of a case that has defined the area for 2 decades. Carol Moore, now 74 years old, takes the witness stand to tell the court about her daughter, not as a victim but as a vibrant young woman whose life was cut short by an act of senseless violence. Her testimony is powerful and heartbreaking, transforming Brenda from a cold case file into a real person whose absence has left an irreparable hole in the world. After 3 weeks of testimony and 2 days of deliberation, the jury returns a verdict of guilty on all charges: first-degree murder, kidnapping, and unlawful disposal of human remains. Webb shows no emotion as the verdict is read, but in the gallery, Carol Moore collapses into her husband's arms. 20 years of grief and uncertainty, finally giving way to something that resembles peace. During the sentencing hearing, Webb is given the opportunity to speak. For a moment, it appears he might finally reveal the location of Brenda's remains, might offer the Moore family the closure they've sought for so long. Instead, he maintains his innocence and expresses no remorse for his actions. Judge Patricia Hendricks sentences Marcus Webb to life in prison without the possibility of parole, adding that while the court cannot restore Brenda Moore to her family, it can ensure that her killer never again has the opportunity to harm another innocent person. The haunting cold of a January night finally gave way to justice. But what does justice mean when 2 decades are already lost? The long echo of justice. Outside the courthouse, Carol Moore faces the media for the final time, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. "Today isn't about revenge," she says, Jim's arm wrapped protectively around her shoulders. "Today is about finally being able to say that Brenda mattered, that her life had meaning, and that even after 20 years, the truth has power." The conviction of Marcus Webb brings closure to one of Indiana's longest-running cold cases, but it also raises profound questions about justice delayed and the cases that remain unsolved. Detective Valdez estimates that advances in forensic genealogy could potentially solve of similar cases across the country, murders and disappearances that have haunted families for decades. For the Moore family, the resolution brings a complex mixture of relief and continued sorrow. They finally have answers about what happened to their daughter, but those answers come with the permanent knowledge that Brenda's remains may never be recovered. Webb has refused to reveal where he disposed of her body, carrying that final secret with him to prison. The case has become a symbol of hope for other families dealing with unsolved disappearances. The Moore family has established the Brenda Moore Foundation, which provides support to families of missing persons and funds advanced DNA testing for cold cases that lack the resources for cutting-edge forensic analysis. If Brenda's story can help solve even one other case, if it can bring peace to even one other family, then maybe some good can come from all this pain, Carol explains to supporters at the Foundation's first fundraising event. The investigation continues in a different form now. Detective Valdez and her team are reviewing dozens of other cold cases, looking for evidence that might benefit from the same genetic genealogy techniques that solved Brenda's murder. Each success builds momentum for additional investigations, creating a ripple effect that extends far beyond a single case in rural Indiana. Marcus Webb sits in a maximum security prison, serving a sentence that ensures he will die behind bars. Investigators continue to question him about Brenda's remains and about other potential victims, but he maintains his silence. His refusal to provide closure to the Moore family represents one final act of cruelty in a case defined by senseless violence. Yet the Moore family chooses to focus not on the evil that took their daughter, but on the good that her memory continues to inspire. Brenda is remembered not as a victim, but as a young woman whose warmth and kindness touched everyone who knew her. Her photograph now hangs in the lobby of Meadowbrook Pharmacy, not as a memorial to tragedy, but as a celebration of a life lived with joy and purpose. The science that finally brought justice to Brenda Moore continues to evolve, offering hope to countless families who still wait for answers. Each solved case creates momentum for the next, building a legacy of justice that extends far beyond any single investigation. 20 years after a young woman vanished on a cold January night, her story has become something larger than tragedy. It has become a testament to the power of persistence, the advancement of science, and the unbreakable bonds of family love that transcend even death itself. If this story of long-delayed justice and the families who never give up has moved you, Subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into cases where persistence and modern science finally bring truth to light. Next week, we'll explore another decades-old mystery that seemed impossible to solve, until one piece of overlooked evidence changed everything. Because sometimes the most important stories are the ones that take 20 years to tell.